comfy.
And I've just got to change a few settings on, oh, there's Chris. Just got to change a few settings and we're good to go.
All right, it looks like it's 5:30, at least from my clock. So I will now call to order the January 19th, 2023 meeting of the Salem Historic Landmarks Commission. First thing on our agenda tonight is the swearing in of a new HLC commissioner. Zach?
I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Fred Wilson, our new attorney for the HLC, which is actually, this is your first time meeting him all. So Fred is going to lead our new commissioner, Chris Morris, in the oath of office.
Hi, everybody. Oh, okay, we do have Mr. Morris here. Right, so it's just a little short paragraph, so I'll do the repeat after me, kind of like you see on TV and everything.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll try not to give you like whole sentences to repeat at once. So I, Chris Morris,
Do
solemnly swear or affirm
solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution and laws
that I will support the Constitution and laws
of the United States of America
of the United States of America
and of the state of Oregon
and of the state of Oregon
and the city charter and ordinances
and the city charter and ordinances
of the city of Salem,
of the city of Salem,
and that I will do the best of my ability
and that I will do to the best of my ability
faithfully and lawfully perform the duties of a historic landmarks commissioner for Salem
the duties of an historic landmark commissioner of Salem
during my continuance therein. And now you're official.
Thanks.
Welcome
right.
back.
Congratulations,
Yeah,
welcome.
thank you.
And now will the recorder please take roll call?
Commissioner Kerdeman. Oh, she's not here. Commissioner Fuller.
Here.
Commissioner Inman.
Present.
Commissioner McGlinty Timbrook.
Present.
Commissioner Morris.
Here.
Commissioner Ponce.
Here.
Commissioner Zimmerman.
Here.
And Commissioner Kerdeman is currently absent, but when they arrive, I'll let you know. But we have quorum.
Thank you, Zach. And the next thing on our agenda is the elections for 2023. Do we have a nomination for chair for the upcoming year?
I will
Commissioner
nominate Andy for chair. Andy Zimmerman.
Are there any other nominations for chair? Seeing none, all those in favor of Andy Zimmerman as the 2023 HLC chair, say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? All right, and now, do we have any nominations for vice chair for 2023 for the HLC? Juliana?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Jennifer McGlinty Timbrook.
Okay, are there any other nominations for vice president or vice chair, excuse me? Seeing none, all those in favor of Jennifer McGlinty Timbrook as vice chair of the HLC for 2023, say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none, congratulations, Jennifer, on being vice chair.
And congratulations to you, Andy, on being chair.
Thank you. All right, Zach, let's see what's the next thing we got here. Public comment. Okay.
Yeah, we
Do
do
we
not
have the commission will now hear testimony from the public concerning items not on the agenda. Is there anyone wishing to speak at this time?
We did not have anyone sign up to provide public comment today, so we don't have any members here to do that.
All right. Okay, the next item we have today is the approval of minutes. May I please have a motion to approve the minutes from November's meeting?
Can I do that since I wasn't at the November meeting? Yes, no? Because if I can, then I will move to approve the minutes as written. However, I was not in attendance at the
I
meeting.
think you would have had to have listened to the recording, Jennifer.
Okay, well, I did not, so I will then abstain.
Yeah, I'll move approval of the minutes.
A second.
All right, Commissioner Inman votes to approve the minutes and Commissioner Ponce seconds. Are there any corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes as provided from the November meeting, say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. Our next item of business tonight is a public hearing. I will now open the public hearing for public hearing for Historic Design Review HIS 22-30 for 555 Liberty Street Southeast. And would the recorder please read the hearing procedure statement into the record?
Yes, this is a public hearing to consider case number HIS 22-30 for property located at 555 Liberty Street Southeast. The criteria applicable to this hearing are listed in Salem Revised Code, Chapter 230.010, designation of local historic resources, failure to raise an issue prior to the close of the public hearing with statements or evidence sufficient to afford the Historic Landmarks Commission and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the hearings officer on that issue. A similar failure to raise constitutional issues relating to proposed conditions of approval precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Prior to the conclusion of the hearing, any participant may request the opportunity to present additional evidence or testimony. The Historic Landmarks Commission will then either continue the public hearing or leave the record open for at least 7 days.
Thank you. Are there any conflicts of interest or ex parte contacts that any commissioner would like to declare at this time? Hearing none, may we now have the staff presentation?
Good evening. I'm Kimberly Fitzgerald, Historic Preservation Officer for the City of Salem. This is a public hearing where you are here to take action on the local historic resource designation of the Salem Civic Center. I'd like to enter the staff report, attachments, and all public testimony into the record. You should all be familiar with where the Civic Center is. It's located at 555 Liberty Street Southeast. And the designation is comprising the area you can see here on the map from Trade Street to Leslie Street and between Commercial and Liberty. So a bit of the history, which if you've ever ridden in the elevator at the Civic Center, you can see a great photo display, which gives you some wonderful pictures that we put up during the Civic Center birthday party. The City of Salem was rapidly growing and the City Hall building was no longer sufficient to house these city services. The community spent almost 2 decades completing multiple studies, engaging the public to determine where and how to build the new Civic Center that would unite all city services while providing accessible public spaces. The National Park Service designated the Salem Civic Center on November 2nd, 2022 to the National Register of Historic Places for its significance as an important local example of the brutalist architectural style, as well as an excellent representation of the ideals of Salem's community planning in the late 1960s and early 1970s. The applicable criteria are in Salem Revised Code 230.010. I'm going to go through these one at a time and let me know if you have any questions as I'm going through them. In order to qualify for local designation, the resource needs to meet the applicable criterion for age, significance, and integrity. So first age, the resource is 50 years of age as of last year. It was constructed in 1972. Therefore, staff recommends the Landmarks Commission find that this criterion has been met for the Salem Civic Center. The next criteria is related to significance, and the resource needs to hold significance in at least one of the following areas: cultural significance, human significance, or architectural significance. And the Civic Center actually it meets all three, and I'll go through one at a time. So for cultural significance, the Civic Center is significant for its association with the planning efforts during the late 1960s and early 1970s. And it's also significant for its association with the local Salem community who worked for almost 20 years to identify a location for the new Civic Center and to gain community support and funding to build it. And then under architectural significance, it's an important local example of the brutalist architectural style, which some folks love and some hate because of the simplistic, heavy concrete features, which was quite a departure from some of the other architectural styles that you can see downtown and in our residential neighborhoods. But it does relate well to the community planning efforts that were happening in the 60s and 70s. The Salem Civic Center Planning Committee really demonstrated a commitment to the participatory community planning methods, which were newly emerging across the nation during this time period. This kind of process is a process that focuses on identifying stakeholders and then establishing a framework where these participants can actually be a real part of the decision-making process. And this process we still use today, and it empowered stakeholders by allowing them to work together to identify, in this particular case, not just where the Civic Center was going to be located, but what it was going to look like and what kind of services it was going to provide. So overall, staff recommends the Landmarks Commission find that the Salem Civic Center meets the criteria for significance in cultural, human, and architectural areas. So the last criteria is related to integrity, and by this it means whether or not the Civic Center overall retains its original form, material, and its in its original location. So the Salem Civic Center does meet all three. Therefore, staff recommends the Landmarks Commission find that the resource retains sufficient original integrity to convey its cultural, human, and architectural significance. I do want to mention the owner consent, and this is a requirement under Oregon state law and also local Salem Revised Code. In this case, the property is owned by the city of Salem. Therefore, the Salem City Council would need to consent to this local designation, which they have not yet done, even though it's listed on the National Register. So even if the HLC agrees to recommend that the Civic Center be designated and move forward with this type 4 legislative process to designate the Civic Center, the City Council ultimately is the one who would need to give that consent as they move forward. And this consent or refusal can occur at any time during the designation process. So we have not received any public comments. We have not received any testimony from the Can-Do Neighborhood Association, which is where this is located. We've not received any city department comments or public agency comments. So the alternatives before you this evening, the Landmarks Commission can recommend approval should you find that the proposed resource is eligible and meets the applicable criteria in SRC 230.010 and recommend that the City Council approve the designation of the Civic Center. And alternatively, the Landmarks Commission could recommend denial if you find that the proposed resource is not eligible for designation and does not meet the applicable criteria. So that concludes the staff report. I'll stop sharing so you can see each other.
Thank you, Kimberly. Do any of the commissioners have questions for staff?
Just real quick for the record, Commissioner Kurtterman joined the meeting at 5:44.
Thank you. All right, it doesn't sound like we have any comments from the commissioners this evening. Do we have any is there anyone here representing the neighborhood association?
We do not have anyone here from the public or the neighborhood association, so we don't have any public comment tonight.
Okay. All right. It's kind of unique because we don't have an applicant per se other than our own. Let's see. I'll ask again, do any commissioners have any additional questions for staff? All right, Commissioner Ponce.
Yeah, maybe we covered this when we first heard the request, but is the designation going to result in any additional requirements from the city or the owner when it is recognized?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that question. It's a good question. So because the Civic Center is already listed on the National Register of Historic Places, it is currently subject to the regulations under Oregon statute. And the designation locally would allow us to apply our local ordinance, Salem Revised Code 230. And so it would just give us more local control over review of any alterations and as you have over other resources in the city.
Thank you.
I've got a question, Kimberly. I know that the City Council is seeking funding to do some work with the Peace Plaza from the legislature. Our efforts tonight, would that affect kind of any of their plans for that project, or is that just kind of completely different?
No. Yeah, I can speak to that. So as a way of an example, let's say that the City Council chooses not to designate the Civic Center locally, but it retains its National Register designation. Then any proposed alterations to the Peace Plaza would go through the review at the Oregon SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office. And the criteria are not what I would call clear and objective. So it's not very predictable what the outcome could be. Alternatively, if it's locally designated, as you know, we have our local code, which I believe is clear and objective. So that it would be very predictable in terms of what kind of alterations would be acceptable. And we also have the mitigation code, which allows, mitigation for any adverse effects on the public resource. So regardless, the funding to support redevelopment of the Peace Plaza would still be able to be secured, and the process to go through any alterations would just be different. We wouldn't have as direct a role if it
Thank
wasn't.
you. Commissioner Inman.
Since we're a certified local government commission, review would if we do our local designation, then review would be with our local commission and would not be primarily with the SHPO. So yeah, that's one of the advantages of local designation. Local control.
Have we ever had any thing like this before? I mean, designating something, city owned or just
I-
curious. I mean, just curious.
I think that I think we talked, the West Salem City Hall, but that's privately owned. That was designated. I think that,
The state capitol.
but that's state owned.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, yeah, I was meaning locally, just I was thinking of when I was in West Chicago where the commission, we had issues with a building that the city owned. And so there was a lot of building permit issues and code things. And so I was just curious from that aspect. So. Thank you.
Would anyone who provided testimony like to request that the record remain open to submit additional evidence not yet presented? Okay, hearing none, I will now close the public hearing. No additional testimony will be accepted at this time without formally reopening the hearing. I will now call for a motion. Commissioner Inman?
Yes. I move that the commission find that the proposed resource is eligible for designation and therefore recommend that the city council approve the designation and further that we approve the findings in our report, in the staff report today.
I'll second.
Thank you. Commissioner Inman, to your motion. Do you want to add anything to what you recommended there?
I think
Or
that's,
comment?
I think that's what we need in order to move this to the city council, correct? It's just
Mhm.
our recommendation that it be so designated and the findings that we base that recommendation on.
We have a motion by Commissioner Inman and seconded by Commissioner McGlinty Timbrook. Is there anyone else who wants to comment on the motion?
I'll comment. Thank you for having me on the commission again. I just anecdotally, when I first came to Salem in architecture 30 years ago, I worked with many of the architects that were the lead designers for this project and heard a tremendous number of stories in a variety of forms about the process of pursuing this and what the architectural community was like at the time. There's a little hint of it in Kimberly's history that talks about how James Payne actually said he would sue the city if they went after a competition. So I think that spoke a little bit to the culture of the territoriality of the architects of the time. But at the time, Payne set a case. I worked with Phil set a case for years and years. I worked with Bill Lindbergh, who was one of the designers of this project. Keith Crispin also worked on this project, and all of them are gone now. I think maybe the only other architect that worked on this that's still here might be Bill Bishoprick. But it really is a unique building. When I moved here, I came from the Midwest, really hadn't seen much like that type of brutalist other than Louis Kahn's work and some Chicago projects. So it was really surprising to me to see that. I thought it was a very interesting city hall and kind of a bold move at the time, similar to some of the work that was throughout the city by Belushi. So anyway, it's for me, it has sort of a personal connection. I remember going through the original drawings of the building when I worked for Aesthetic Casement at DOS and just seeing them there. And those of all, I don't know that Kimberly was able to collect any of those, but we had the flat files going back into the 50s, and I think most of those have disappeared at this point. I know, but I think it's a very good example of brutalist architecture, and I think that, as Kimberly said, it can be a polarizing style, but it represents it well.
Thank you. Any other commissioners want to share their thoughts? Yeah, I think it's definitely a unique style that you don't really see around Salem, and I appreciate the work of the HLC and folks that have made an effort to make this, a landmark, and hopefully, as it ages, folks will continue to find appreciation with it. Maybe, like has been mentioned earlier, not because they're in love with the brutalist style, but just the fact that it's such a unique building in Salem, and it, that uniqueness kind of makes it stand out for all who pass by it, and have go to the library, go to the city hall, that kind of a thing. I will now call for a vote. All those in favor of making the recommendation to the city council to approve the proposal to designate the Salem Civic Center as a local historic resource, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, say nay. All right, the motion passes. Thank you. And now we have I think, just one action item for today, the 2023 work plan. Kimberly?
Thank you. Kimberly Fitzgerald, Historic Preservation Officer for the city. You did receive the draft annual report and work plan in your packets. I'm going to do a quick overview, and then we're looking for you to take action on this evening. So we completed 33 historic design reviews, 28 of which were administrative, with 5 that went before the Landmarks Commission. You probably noticed we've shifted since the update to our code a few years ago to the Landmarks Commission, focusing more on the truly major cases and working more on the other items in the work plan, which I think is fantastic. We've also been growing our archaeological compliance program. We completed 24 archaeological compliance reviews and continue to have our monthly archaeological roundtable with the tribes. And we've added a new process. We're doing internal reviews of city-owned historic properties. So for example, alterations to Deepwood, Bush House, AC Gilbert, that sort of thing. We're trying to stay on top of that, and that includes interior work, minor things as well. Anything major would come to you or go through administrative review as well, but this is just another level of review that we're doing. Last year, we provided roughly about $10,000 in grant funding through our Toolbox grant, which is still going strong. We continue to publish our quarterly newsletter, and thanks to Andy, we have a presence on social media. We hosted our historic photo contest and even helped celebrate the Civic Center's 50th birthday in August with a special photo contest that we had last year. And during Historic Preservation Month, we also gave out many awards. The Ben Maxwell Award went to the Kitchen on Court for their preservation and interpretation of the transom windows. And then a residential award was given to Connie Strong for her work at 296 14th Street. And then Virginia Green Award was given to our very own Kirsten Strauss for her work on interpretation around Salem, specifically the wraps located on utility boxes around town. And then we had a new award, the Cultural Landscape Award, which was given to the City of Salem Parks Department and their consultant team for their work on Bush's Pasture Park and Deepwood Estate Gardens Cultural Landscape Management Plan. And then the chair award was given to Tracy Schwartz for her work on the Civic Center nomination and service as chair to the Landmarks Commission. This last year, we've also been working with the Highland Neighborhood Association. They had been recognized as our third heritage neighborhood in 2021. You were given a draft of that booklet in your packet, so take a look at that. It provides an interesting overview of the history and architecture in the Highland neighborhood. And then last year, we began a new public archaeology project, beginning work on the Indian Manual Labor Training School by excavating to look for the foundation of the parsonage building, which was the original administration building for this school. And the Landmarks Commission received a national award for our archaeology program last summer from NAPC, the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions. That was pretty exciting. So we continue to do a lot. I probably missed something, but Zach's always does a great job on the report. So please let him know. I know he has to update pictures and stuff and things. So we can let him know if there's anything he missed that you would like him to happen. And now the work plan. So this is our work plan for 2023. Again, it's in your packets. I just want to call your attention primarily to the 5 new items. For a little bit of background, for those of you that don't know, we did adopt our annual work plans through when we did the update to our historic preservation plan in 2020. And we've identified 6 goals and action items within these goals so that we can make progress overall in these 6 areas. So while it looks like there's a ton of stuff on here, well, there is a ton of stuff on here. A lot of this work is ongoing. The items in red are the new actions identified for us to work on this year. I'll just highlight what those are. So under public outreach and education, our goal this year would be to work with the neighborhood associations to establish and celebrate Historic Neighborhood Day. And then the rest of the items are primarily collaborative efforts. So we'd be looking to have a member of the Landmarks Commission be a liaison to the Culture and Heritage Forum to help support their development of a cultural heritage strategic master plan. We wanted to collaborate with partners to sponsor technical workshops, and we want to identify opportunities to work with parks to develop educational programming. And we also want to focus on educational programming about Salem's traditionally underrepresented communities. So that's the overview. I do want to highlight under archaeology, again, we want to continue with our public archaeology project. We're going to be excavating second phase at Willamette Heritage Center again in April. And then I want to highlight under goal 6, I actually am working with Portland State just this afternoon, talked on the phone with the professor there who has a graduate student who's willing to work with us on creating a cultural resource management plan in collaboration with the tribes, and then have as part of that the National Register designation of the Jason archaeological site. So that's our hope to do that this year. So wrapping up, the recommendation is for the Landmarks Commission to discuss and accept the 2022 annual report and 2023 work plan, and forward it on to City Council as an information item. And then normally the chair, so Andy or Jennifer, would attend. So that concludes the report on the work plan. Dr. Sharon.
Thank you, Kimberly. Does anybody have any questions for staff?
I would like to note just real quick some things that I would like some feedback on. So I do have some pictures that I'm going to put into the annual report, but I'd particularly, if you could all review your little bio that's in there. So this is for commissioners who were on the board last year. If you would like your bio updated, please let me know so I can update that for the draft. And then any other edits you'd like as well, but that one is one I would particularly like you to look at.
Thank you, Zach. Any questions for staff? All right. Since it's an action item, can we get a motion?
I'll move to approve our work plan and bring it to city council.
I will second that.
Thank you, Commissioner McGlinty Timbrook and Commissioner Fuller for seconding the motion. Do you want anything? Do you want to add anything to your motion? Any comment, Commissioner Timbrook? Okay, Commissioner Fuller, do you want to add anything?
I just want to say that Historic Neighborhood Day sounds like a whole lot of fun. So.
Oh, I did think of something by that. Historic Neighborhood Day, and can you like wrap in like maybe the elementary schools in those neighborhoods too? Because like especially I think it's fourth grade where they're doing like local history or state history or some kind of more focused history in Oregon, and so that would be a good opportunity too for that.
All right. Does anybody else want to comment? Okay. All right. All those in favor of accepting the annual report and work plan and forwarding it to the city council, say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed, say nay. All right. Thank you, everybody. And now we move on to some discussion items. The first one is to continue whether to meet virtually or in person. And I think Zach's got some information on that one.
Yeah, so we sent out a brief survey to all the commissioners, and I got responses back from almost everyone. The primary response, the one we got the most, was that people didn't care. So they did not have a preference one way or the other. The people who did, we had, I think, 3 of the commissioners have a slight preference for going to in-person. So that's the only indication we have. But for the most part, people said they didn't care one way or the other. And the reasons listed were just they haven't been in person before and they'd like to. That it has a more of an air of professionalism to be in the council chambers, and just the potential for better connection between commissioners when we're in person. So those are the pros that people listed for returning to in person, and that's all the information I've collected in my survey. But it's up for you to decide. Just as a reminder, according to city policy, we either have to be all in person or all virtual, and we wouldn't be able to pick and choose by meeting. If we were to return to in-person, it would mean that no commissioner could attend virtually, and we wouldn't accept any virtual testimony. But that will be in person. And then if we remain virtual, it'll just be exactly what we've been doing. So that's that.
Commissioner Critterman.
I cannot hear you. Does your microphone have a bypass mute?
It looks like we still can't hear you, Commissioner.
Yeah.
Commissioner Potts, do you want to hop in?
Working on technical difficulties, I'll just ask. So I've never been in person because I joined right when we were going virtual. Has there been a difference in the amount of testimony, the amount of public input, the amount of attention or interest that the council and commission has received versus being in person at City Hall?
I'm going to turn that over to Kim because I started working during the pandemic, so I also do not know.
I can speak to the Landmarks Commission, but I can't really speak to the rest of the city. And I think Lisa has a good feel for what's what that experience has been like. I think I know that there's a handful of folks, I would call her, who used to come a lot, and they have not, primarily, I think, due to technology challenges. That said, there are some things that I noted that we did do that we didn't do before. For example, the case for Connie Strong's house, we were able to go on a tour of her house during a hearing, which we had never done before, which was kind of cool. Because we were doing it virtually. So I see that, good and bad. But I think Lisa can add.
Yeah, that's a great question, Commissioner. I would say at planning, so I go to planning commission and every council meeting as well. So yeah, I would say for both of those, the attendance and testimony has dropped off significantly especially around land use, which just seems odd to me because I thought, well, people will be more available and like less worried about standing up in like this big chambers and like they would be more willing to give their testimony over Zoom. But the reality has been there's been a lot less people in the last 2 years that have participated. Planning Commission voted to go back in person. Council's obviously back in person now. So hopefully that would, tick up. I know that we had a case at the hearings officer who will also be going back in person last month where a lot of the neighbors didn't want to testify, but they wanted to join the Zoom so the hearings officer could see that they supported the people that were testifying. And it's like, well, we don't let you in the Zoom if you're not going to testify. You can watch it on YouTube. And they're like, well, I want to just show support by being in the room, which is a really common thing in council chambers for public hearings for land use and controversial. So not everybody speaks, but they come and support. Sometimes they hold signs and that kind of stuff. Not as much at HLC, but yeah. So I think in person, I don't know if it will return. I'm interested to find out if maybe people have just moved on and they don't want to be involved with local government anymore. I'm not sure. But yeah, for sure, less over Zoom.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jessica, did you get figured out?
Not really. I lost the internet, so I'm on my phone. But yeah, I was just mainly gonna say that, like, I know I was pretty disappointed to not be able to return to in-person. I went on maternity leave and then COVID happened. So it was very abrupt for me. And I would love to get out of the house and see people that are taller than me. So I fully appreciate the in-person. I know I said I don't care, but it was mainly if people don't feel comfortable in person, I'm totally fine virtual, but I like the in-person part.
So Zach, do we need to make this an action item, or how does a decision kind of come together for something like this?
I believe that you just make a decision and we go with it. I don't think that it needs to be a formal action. I just remembered we did have one person who commented that they didn't have a preference either way, but that if we were to return in person, they would like for us to mask and follow COVID safety protocols for just in case. So that was a comment that someone made. I forgot because it was a neutral comment. So
that was my comment, and I just I don't know what the air quality situation is in the council chamber. And there's a lot of good solid data now on how many air changes per hour should be, should be in a public space and what the CO2 levels should be. And I don't know if the city has tested, monitored, put filtration systems in place. So that's my only, question or concern. I've personally gone back to singing in a choir, and so we're singing together, but we are wearing masks for our rehearsals. So it hasn't caused any infections or problems in that group. So anyway, that was my only concern.
Yeah, it's been like my first year on the Landmarks Commission, we were in person, and I appreciated kind of the conversations you would have with fellow commissioners when, before things got started or afterwards, just to kind of get a better feel for, other people who were serving. And then just kind of in a fun way, we always had like snacks too, on, each before each meeting. I think Kirsten brought in a lot of those kind of things. So it was just kind of a light atmosphere. I mean, we were serious about the work that we were doing, but just the kind of community of folks. So I kind of miss that. I can definitely understand the value of the convenience from doing it from home, but I kind of miss some of those other little things that we experienced on the commission when we were in person as well. So I kind of lean, maybe a little bit more in person, but I can completely understand the preference to be, virtual.
I'm apparently the party pooper. Because, well, I like both, because and I guess other than Chris, who's been here and been back and stuff, like I've pretty much met everybody in some random way, shape, or form, whether it be a subcommittee or the open houses that we were having for the planet, for the preservation plan update and stuff. My big thing is, I guess, just the flexibility. I'm also, partial to this because I'm going to go out of town next month. But so I would be able to attend next month, but I wouldn't be able to if we, that's the way we did it. But, I do love seeing everybody in person. And, but I do like, I don't know. I like the virtual thing. That's just me. So anyway.
Yeah. And
I could care less really either way, but just, from a flexibility standpoint, like, yeah.
So should we just vote then, Zach? Is that the best way, since it sounds like we've all kind of shared concerns one way or another, or?
Steve has his hand up.
Oh, Steve, sorry. Go ahead, please.
No, just if we were to go back in person, is the chamber open, on the day that we've been holding? Would we have to be flexible in that, or is it a reserved time already?
We have it reserved. We actually, I think, technically had it reserved throughout the whole pandemic, just in case we return to in person. So we do have it reserved for the entire calendar year. There will be nothing else that would move our spot or anything. So, so we don't have to worry about that logistically.
Thank you.
And since Kirsten will be back at some point, that it's a good time to be in person so she can bring snacks in.
Oh, we're not going to make her bring snacks.
Yeah, that was a
Sally,
volunteer role.
Sally
It started,
bring
yeah,
snacks
actually,
too.
yeah.
Sally would bring healthy snacks. Sometimes she would bring sweet snacks, but sometimes they were really healthy too.
I have a quick, I guess, clarifying question before we vote. Is my only real concern is that by going public, or like going in person, we would be substantively reducing public access to our meetings. Like, we were kind of talking about this, like a little bit around this, right? Like the public isn't going as much to like physical in-person functions as they were before. People are more concerned about, are more interested in Zoom and could be more interested in showing that kind of support. And like, do we have any way of garnering or generating public interest or access once we do, or if we do go back to being in person? Because like getting as many people publicly from the city that live in the city involved with this is what we should be doing, right?
So the meeting would be recorded and streamed live on YouTube.
Okay.
There just wouldn't be anybody that could sign up through Zoom to speak. And that includes commissioner, staff, or the public. So people could still watch it. The people that are like, maybe there's people watching it right now, I don't know, at home. So people could still watch it that way.
Okay, but if they wanted to speak, they would need to come to the chambers with us. Okay, that clears things up. So yeah, so I guess so long as we're still making it publicly accessible, then that's okay. Cool.
So one final question. If we do make a change, is there a notice period where we have to at least put it out 30 days before we make a change, so that, or is it immediate?
So we provide 20-day notice for all public hearings, and we always list the location or manner of Zoom, we've been saying for the last 2 years. So then if the commission decides now at your next meeting, if there's a public hearing, at least 20 days before, that notice would indicate that it's in person, and we would kind of bold it, and you know, in the email to the neighborhoods that we send would say like, this is a new location, so people know. If there's no public hearing, then it would just be noted on your agenda, because the agenda goes out a week in advance instead of 20 days.
Thank you.
We could also feature it in our newsletter, which, as you know, everyone reads.
Or on your social media too.
Yeah.
All right, it sounds like we should take a vote. Zach, how would you prefer to do this?
I think that we'll probably do this similarly to how we do our photo voting, where I'll do a roll call and you just say if you prefer in person or staying on Zoom. And I think at this point, I'm just going to accept those two offers. I'm not going to accept either way.
Sounds
if that sounds okay to the commission. So I'll go ahead and do a roll call. Let me get up to my roll. So Commissioner Kurdeman, you're first.
Vote in person.
Commissioner Fuller?
I'm going to go in person as well.
Commissioner Inman?
In person.
Commissioner McGlinty Timbrook?
Zoom.
Okay. Commissioner Morris?
In person.
Commissioner Ponce?
In person.
And Commissioner Zimmerman?
In person.
Okay, so in person is the majority, so we will be returning to in person for our February 16th meeting. If I don't believe we have a public hearing at this point, but it'll be on our agenda, and we'll put it on the website and things to notify the public.
Thank you. All right, our next item to discuss is the newsletter.
Oh, that's also me. So our newsletter should be going out next week. There were several people who signed up for articles before the holiday. So hopefully you remember that. You've been working on those. I believe that we were potentially, I think we talked about this and it might be postponed, but I can't remember. Commissioner Ponce, are we getting an update on the renovations to the DAS building?
I'd like to push that to spring if I could. We don't have the data yet for any of the improvements.
Okay. And I do not remember off the top of my head who signed up for the other things. I should pull that up. But if you already know that you owe me an article, great. I will accept that anytime. I'm planning on sending it out by Friday of next week, right? Yeah. And this is the print version of our newsletter. So we do have an insert, which I believe I shared with you all at our last meeting for our current homeowners, just about general enforcement and information about owning a historic home. And we'll have a letter from the chair and just probably 1 or 2 articles because we are limited with our physical mailing. And then we'll also send a digital version to the people who don't get the physical one. But that'll go out next week. And then we didn't pick any themes for next year, I don't believe. So last year we assigned themes for the entire year's worth of articles. But we haven't done that for this year. If anyone has any themes that they think would be fun to pursue, that would be great. Yeah. Does anyone have anything that they think would be interesting topics for us to pursue in the newsletter? The history of clowns. I'm just coming up with random things.
Zach, maybe we can have it as an agenda in February, since we don't have a hearing, and we're going to be talking about work plan assignment as well.
Yeah, and we could tie it into the work plan and maybe do something about the history of education, since we're going to be doing a lot of public education and things like that. So yeah, so we'll go ahead.
Doesn't Kirsten have a little thing? Isn't she a public history
You're gonna assign
professional?
all the stuff to her.
Yeah. So we'll go ahead and we'll do the themes for this coming year at our next meeting. I will we'll also assign articles, and our spring newsletter should go out at the beginning of April. So so just a heads up if you're signed up for that. I looked up things that people, oh no, I'm wrong. That's the wrong thing. I have 3 people. We're gonna write something for the newsletter. So I have Brett, Andy, and Commissioner Ponce, but we're gonna move Commissioner Ponce's to the next one because we don't have the data for that. So I didn't write down what you were writing about, but I think Andy, you were going to write about the clock tower because it's the background of your photo, and how
I think we were talking about like a then and now, and I came up with
Yeah.
one that hasn't been discussed. I saw this photo months ago, and I did a little more research, and it's like, okay, I'll do something about this specific building. So
okay,
I'll just leave it as a teaser there, and I'll get you the information over the weekend.
that sounds fine. And Commissioner Fuller, I don't remember what you were doing.
We didn't
either.
know at the time. I looked back on my notes, and it was back in September was the last time I saw it and talked to you. But I, looking at some of the stuff that we've been doing with the school, the Indian Manual and Training School, I've got a pretty interesting article on the Mission Cemetery going right now. And doing a then and now of why is it there, and why that hill. So
Great. So I'll expect those next week, and we'll get that out, and we will talk about the themes at our next meeting, and that should be it for the newsletter from me, I think, unless anyone has any questions about it.
Thanks, Zach. We have next on our discussion list work plan assignments, as well as just a check-in. Does anybody have anything of note that they want to discuss or mention about some of their work plan efforts? It doesn't sound like anybody's in that mindset just yet. I know we have a lot, or we're going to talk about it more our February meeting. So we can just, I guess, sit tight on that one, and if everybody's fine with that, and kind of circle back around once we have a little bit more of a discussion at next month's meeting. And then we also have commissioner training that we're going to talk about. Kimberly, I think that was something, or was that a Zach?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. So we're planning an in-person training that'll be held in the Anderson room of the library. We don't have an official date for that yet, but it should be, I believe we decided end of February, beginning of March. So it'll be after our first in-person meeting in Chambers, and it'll be in the evening, probably around the same time as when a commission meeting would start. We'll provide some food and go over training on land use cases and conflicts of interest and all that stuff. And then this will be a joint training with new commissioners for the Planning Commission. It is targeted at new commissioners, but we also, it's a great resource for all commissioners to come to get a refresher, maybe learn some things that we might have missed over a Zoom training or something like that. So we'll send out more information once it's actually scheduled, but it'll probably be a weekday evening at 5:30 or 6 in the Anderson room of the library.
Thanks, Zach. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Now it's on to the Historic Preservation Officer report. Kimberly.
I have just one additional thing to share with you. So I don't recall who happened to be on the commission when we reviewed the actual demolition of the Marion Car Park. It was back in 2018. And there were several conditions of approval. One of them was to include an interpretive panel on the new building that has a summary of the history and significance of both the car park and the Holman building. So we have a draft. I believe you were sent that's also in your packet, but I just wanted to share with you that it's finally happening. If you have any comments or suggestions, please send them our way, because they're going to be manufacturing this and installing it within the next month or so. So you can kind of see where it's going to be installed right there on the front of the building. So that's really all I wanted to share. And I also just want to let you know, for those of you that don't know, Commissioner Holton, David Holton, resigned from the commission for personal reasons. So unfortunately, we're losing him. He's a great commissioner. It was also his second go around serving. So we're going to be on the lookout for a new commissioner to replace him. So, and Zach and I are going to be working on certificates. That's where we landed for Carol and Patty and for David. So I also want to just acknowledge how much I appreciate all the commissioners powering through the last 3 years, I guess 3 years on Zoom. We've been able to continue to do a lot of good work, even though we've not met in person. So sometimes it's been difficult. Sometimes it's been great. So yeah, I just want to acknowledge that we've lived through something. I'm looking forward to seeing folks in person.
Will this count as something historic preservation worthy in 50 years?
Oh my gosh, I think so. Yeah, in my world, in the preservation world, we're trying to figure out how do we document this? How do we, and of course, living through it at the time, I was trying to take pictures and collect things, but now I'm like, I should have done more. Yeah, it's something.
Well, I'm always going to remember when it started, since my girls were 2 weeks old when the lockdown happened, and they're turning 3 next month. So it's been 3 years.
Wow. Yeah. The stories you get to tell them. Yeah, and I remember we had a public archaeology project at the Jason Lee site, which was in April 2020, and we did archaeology in masks and had no idea what was. I mean, we powered through. It's remarkable, and did public engagement in a different way. I learned how to make videos. Yeah, that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Kimberly. And I think that's all that we have tonight. And so the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Woohoo.